The endless war and the missing humans. For 37 years, the galaxy burned. The war between the Zyphron Empire and the Valorian Alliance had consumed entire star systems. Planets had been reduced to lifeless rocks, civilizations wiped out, and billions of lives lost. What had started as a territorial dispute had turned into an unstoppable cycle of bloodshed. Both sides had powerful war fleets, each equipped with planet-destroying weapons. Every battle brought destruction, but neither side could claim victory. The war had reached a point where no one remembered why it had begun, only that it had to continue. But in all these years, one question remained unanswered. Where were the humans? The silent species. Humans were not a weak race. In fact, they were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Their technology was impressive, their intelligence unmatched, and their ability to adapt was legendary. Yet, despite being fully capable of joining the war, they had chosen to stay silent. Many believe humans were afraid. They had seen what happened to other species caught between the Zyphrons and the Valorians. The Hikari, the Yilvans, and even the mighty Drevakans had been forced to pick a side, only to be crushed in the endless battles. Others thought humans were simply not interested. The war had no effect on Earth, and as long as humanity remained neutral, they had no reason to interfere. But some whispered a different theory. They believed humans were waiting for the right moment, waiting for a reason to fight. The Battle of Yvonne 5. The war was about to reach a new turning point. The Zyphrons had launched a full-scale assault on Valorian-controlled Yvonne 5, an industrial planet critical to the war effort. If the Valorians lost it, their supply chains would collapse, and victory for the Zyphrons would be inevitable. The skies above Yvonne 5 turned red with fire as warships clashed. Laser cannons, nuclear missiles, and energy torpedoes filled the space with explosions. The battle raged for hours, both sides refusing to back down. Then, the Zyphrons unleashed their dreadnoughts, massive warships the size of small moons. These monsters carried weapons strong enough to wipe out entire cities in seconds. The Valorian forces, outnumbered and overwhelmed, began to fall back. Valorian High Commander Relos watched in horror from his command center. The screens around him showed their fleets being torn apart. The ground forces on Yvonne 5 were losing. The war was slipping out of their hands. Desperate, he activated the emergency galactic distress signal. A final plea for help. A message to every species in the galaxy. A message to the humans. The unexpected answer. For a long moment, there was silence. The battle continued, explosions filling the void of space, but no response came. And then, a signal blinked on the screen. One word. Acknowledged. Commander Relos stared in disbelief. His officers gasped. The humans had answered. For the first time in 37 years, they had spoken. The message was simple, yet terrifying. Human forces inbound. And that was it. No request for information, no demand for alliances, just a statement, a warning. The war had lasted for decades. Trillions had fought and died. Entire species had been erased from history. But now, humanity had finally decided to step in. No one knew what would happen next. But one thing was certain. Everything was about to change. Part 2. The last battle begins. Also they thought. The Valorians had fought for 37 years. They had seen countless battles, watched their worlds burn, and lost billions of lives. They knew war better than any other species in the galaxy. Yet, as they stood on the bridge of their dying warships, watching the human fleet arrive, something new filled their hearts. Fear. A small but strange arrival. The Zyphrons, too, were watching. Their mighty dreadnoughts, armed with weapons strong enough to destroy planets, had already locked onto the incoming ships. Their war commander, Kraxvator, stood tall, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he analyzed the enemy. 12 ships, he muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. It was laughable. The Zypheran fleet had over 3,000 warships, each equipped with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. The Valorians had even fewer ships left, their forces already on the edge of defeat. And humans had sent only 12 ships. The Valorian High Commander Rilos clenched his fists as he watched the human fleet approach. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "They're going to die before they even reach us." But the humans didn't slow down. They moved forward, calm, steady, unshaken. And that's when everything changed. The attack that should have ended them. Krax Vator had fought in over 1,000 battles. He had seen enemies surrender, beg for mercy, and die screaming. But never had he seen an enemy this foolish. He turned to his gunnery officer. "Destroy them," he ordered. The Zypheran warships opened fire. Thousands of energy blasts, missiles, and torpedoes filled the darkness of space, all racing toward the human ships. No fleet in history had ever survived such an attack. But the humans did not even try to dodge. Instead, something impossible happened. The Zypheran weapons vanished. Not exploded, not blocked, just disappeared. Every missile, every laser, every torpedo that should have torn the human fleet apart simply blinked out of existence before impact. Silence filled the battlefield. The Valorians stayed in shock. The Zypherans froze in confusion. And then, before anyone could react, the humans attacked. Weapons never seen before, the lead human ship fired its first shot. It was a single thin, golden beam of light. One Zypheran battleship was hit. And then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Not destroyed, not turned to debris, just gone, as if it had never existed. Krax Vator's blood turned cold. "What is this technology?" he roared. The human fleet continued forward, unharmed. Another golden beam fired. Another Zypheran battleship vanished. Then another. And another. Within 3 minutes, 10 Zypheran warships were erased from existence. The battlefield was no longer a war zone. It was a slaughter. The silent horror. On the Valorian flagship, Commander Relos could not believe what he was seeing. "They're not fighting a battle," he whispered. "They're cleaning up a mess." For 37 years, the war had raged. Millions of battles had been fought. Strategies had been perfected, defenses strengthened, weapons upgraded. And in just 3 minutes, humans had rendered all of it useless. The Zypherans were the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Their empire had never known defeat. Yet, in front of humanity's power, they looked weak. And then, a message appeared on every ship's communication screen. It was a single sentence. "Stand down or be erased." It was not a threat. It was a fact. Krax Vator's last decision. The Zypheran war commander had a choice. He could surrender, accept defeat, or he could fight to the bitter end. His claws dug into the metal of his command chair. "No," he growled. "We do not surrender." He activated the Titan Dreadnought, the most powerful warship in the fleet. A monster of a ship, equipped with enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. And then, with a single command, he launched the Doomsday Missile. A weapon so powerful that it could wipe out an entire solar system. If he was going to die, he would take the humans with him. But as the missile raced toward its target, the human ships vanished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one of the human ships reappeared, right above the Zypheran command ship. A voice, cold and calm, echoed through every speaker on the battlefield. You were given a choice. The golden beam fired again. The Titan Dreadnought, the strongest warship ever built, disappeared. The battlefield fell into complete silence. And for the first time in Zypheran history, they surrendered. The first strike, a weapon never seen before, for 37 years, war had been everything. The Zypherans had conquered planets, wiped out civilizations, and crushed every enemy that stood against them. The Valorians had fought back with everything they had, refusing to be destroyed. But now, in the cold darkness of space, both empires stood frozen, watching the impossible unfold. Humanity had arrived. And in just minutes, the war that had lasted for decades was on the verge of ending. The silence before the storm. On the Zypheran command deck, War Commander Krax Vator gritted his sharp teeth. His claws dug into the armrest of his throne-like chair, his reptilian tail twitching in frustration. "Impossible," he hissed. "This is impossible." 12 human ships. Just 12. And yet, they had destroyed hundreds of Zypheran warships without taking a single hit. Krax Vator's mind raced. The Zypherans had fought thousands of battles. They had seen every kind of weapon imaginable. Plasma cannons, neutron warheads, black hole bombs. But the golden beams fired by the humans, they were something else. They didn't explode. They didn't damage. They simply erased whatever they touched. Ships didn't break apart. They didn't leave behind wreckage or burning debris. They were just gone. And now, the human fleet was moving again. Slow. Unstoppable. Like hunters circling their prey. The fear of the Valorians. On the Valorian flagship, High Commander Relos felt an emotion he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. Not of the Zypherans, not of death, but of humanity. For 37 years, the Valorians had begged the humans to join the war, to choose a side, to fight against the Zypheran Empire. And now that they had, Relos wasn't sure if it had been a good idea. He watched as another Zypheran dreadnought tried to escape. A massive warship, larger than a city, engines glowing bright as it attempted to flee the battlefield. A human ship turned toward it. A golden beam flashed. The dreadnought was gone. Relos swallowed hard. "This is not war," he whispered. "This is annihilation. The Zypherans' last hope." Krax Vator slammed his fist on the control panel. "We are Zypherans. We do not run." He turned to his weapons officer. "Fire the Oblivion cannons. All of them." The Oblivion cannons were the Zypherans' strongest weapon. They had turned entire planets into dust. If anything could stop the humans, it was this. The Zypheran warships charged their weapons. A deep, unnatural hum filled the battlefield. The energy cores inside their ships glowed black, absorbing power from the very fabric of space itself. Then, with a blinding flash, the cannons fired. Gigantic beams of pure destruction surged forward, racing toward the human fleet. This was it. This had to be enough. The first strike. The human ships didn't move. They didn't dodge. They didn't raise shields. They just watched. And then, at the very last second, the beams bent. Like water flowing around a rock, the Zypheran attack simply curved away from the human ships, redirected into the empty void of space. The Valorians gasped. The Zypherans stared in horror. The most powerful weapon in the galaxy had just been ignored. And then, the humans struck back. One by one, the human ships fired their golden beams again. Zypheran warships, ships that had survived countless battles, vanished instantly. 100 ships. 200. 300. The Zypheran fleet was being erased from existence, and there was nothing they could do. Krax Vator's breathing became ragged. This is not possible. But it was happening. And it wasn't stopping. The final moment. The battlefield was silent now. The Zypheran fleet, the strongest armada the galaxy had ever seen, was gone. All that remained was one ship. Krax Vator's command ship. His claws trembled as a single message appeared on his screen. It was from the humans. A voice, cold, calm, emotionless, spoke. "This war is over. Surrender or be erased." The mighty war commander, who had never known defeat, who had led his people to conquer 100 worlds, suddenly felt small. He took a deep breath. His eyes flickered to the self-destruct button. If he was going to die, he would take the humans with him. But before he could press it, a golden beam struck his ship. And just like that, the Zypheran Empire was no more. Part 4. The Fear Spreads. The Unstoppable Humans. For 37 years, the Zypheran Empire had been unstoppable. They had conquered worlds, crushed enemies, and built an empire that stretched across the stars. But in just 5 hours, they had been erased. The news spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, rulers, warlords, and commanders received the same message. The Zypheran Empire is gone. The humans did it. And with that message, something unseen in centuries gripped the galaxy. Fear. Underscore, 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 underscore. The Council of Galactic Powers. Deep within the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Dominion called an emergency meeting. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled over the lesser species, maintaining control through fear and power. The Zypherans had been their greatest weapon, used to keep rebellious worlds in check. Now, the Zypherans were gone. The High Chancellor, a cold, reptilian creature with 6 golden eyes, slammed his fist on the table. How? He demanded. How can a primitive species like humans wipe out the strongest empire in the galaxy? Silence filled the chamber. No one had an answer. A nervous, insectoid ambassador spoke. We always believed humans were weak. That is why we never invited them to war. A towering armored warlord from the Drakkar Dominion growled. Weak? Weak. His red eyes burned with rage. Do you call the destruction of 3,000 warships weak? The insectoid trembled. And no, I meant, we thought they were weak. But clearly, they are not. The room filled with quiet murmurs. Had they made a mistake? For centuries, the galactic powers had ignored humanity. They were kept isolated, left to develop on their own. No one had feared them. But now they had wiped out an empire in 5 hours. And nobody knew how. The survivors' horror. The Valorians were the only witnesses of the battle. They had fought the Zypherans for decades, losing billions of lives. They had begged the humans to join them. And the humans had done so. But they had not fought like warriors. They had not strategized like tacticians. They had erased the enemy. Now, the few surviving Valorian officers stood aboard their flagship, staring at the emptiness of space where an empire had once existed. There was no wreckage, no debris, no bodies. It was as if the Zypherans had never existed at all. Commander Rillos turned to his second-in-command. His voice was quiet, shaken. Did we make a mistake? His officer frowned. What do you mean? Rillos swallowed. We begged them to help us. We wanted them to fight. He gestured toward the empty void. But this isn't war. His officer nodded slowly. No, this is something else. Something far worse. The fracturing alliances. As the news of humanity's victory spread, alliances began to break. Empires that had once worked together now turned on each other. Some wanted to prepare for war against the humans. Others wanted to surrender before they even had a chance to fight. One empire, the Tulvok dynasty, immediately sent a message to Earth. We surrender. Please do not destroy us. They hadn't even been at war with the humans. They just didn't want to end up like the Zypherans. Other empires weren't so willing to submit. The Drakkar Dominion, one of the most aggressive war nations in the galaxy, declared, humanity must be stopped before they decide to erase us next. They began gathering their fleets, preparing for war. But even as they did, doubt crept into their minds. Could they actually fight the humans? Could they survive even a single battle? The humans say nothing despite the chaos in the galaxy. Humanity remains silent. They had won the war in 5 hours. And then, they did nothing. No demands. No messages. No threats. They simply turned their fleet around and left. This was what scared the galaxy the most. They hadn't destroyed the Zypherans for power. They hadn't taken over their territory. They hadn't enslaved anyone. They had simply removed the problem and moved on, as if it was nothing, as if an entire empire meant nothing to them. And that single fact sent a wave of pure terror across the stars. If humans could do this to the Zypherans, what could they do to the rest of the galaxy? A choice must be made. Across the galaxy, rulers and warlords met in secret. They had 2 options. 1. Fight the humans before it was too late. 2. Surrender before they even had to. Neither option felt safe. For the first time in history, the galaxy had no control over its own fate. Because somewhere out there, the humans were watching. And if they ever decided to act again, nothing would be able to stop them. The hidden truth, humanity's darkest secret. Humanity never wanted war, but that didn't mean they didn't prepare for it. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humans were weak, primitive, isolated, unimportant. But the truth was something far more terrifying. The stolen transmissions. The Valorians had always been excellent spies. Even in the darkest moments of the war, their intelligence networks had survived, gathering data, intercepting enemy communications, and uncovering secrets that could shift the tides of battle. But this was something they were never supposed to see. Deep inside a hidden Valorian intelligence base, a group of elite operatives huddled around a holographic screen. Their leader, Agent Sira, narrowed her glowing silver eyes as the intercepted human transmission played in front of them. The room was silent, except for the human voice echoing through the speakers. Observation report, Galactic War, Cycle 200. Subject, Zypheran-Valorian conflict. Conclusion, war remains predictable. No deviation from expected strategies. No adaptation. No significant progress. Syra's breath caught in her throat. Cycle 200? Humans had only entered the war a few hours ago. And yet, this report was centuries old. She pressed the screen, fast-forwarding. Final assessment. Victory achievable in one coordinated strike. No need for full-scale engagement. Defensive technology sufficient. Her hands trembled. The humans had already planned this war 200 years ago. They had watched. They had studied. They had prepared. And when the time had come, they had ended the war in 5 hours. Not because they were stronger. Not because they had better weapons. But because they knew exactly what would happen before it even began. The ultimate strategy. Syra turned to her team. They knew. Her voice was barely a whisper. They knew everything before they even fired the first shot. The second-in-command, Rick swallowed hard. How? How is that possible? She shook her head. They observed. They recorded every battle, every strategy, every move the Zypherans and Valorians made. They knew this war better than we did. Her fingers danced over the console, pulling up another document. It was a massive database of every species' military history. The Zypherans, the Valorians, the Drakkar, the Tolvok. Every empire, every war, every mistake. The humans had everything. And then she saw something even worse. A final entry. The Zypheran Empire has made its last move. Planetary extinction bomb detected. Probability of launch, 98%. Countermeasure, ready. Syra's blood ran cold. The Zypherans are going to launch an extinction bomb. She turned to her team. "We have to warn the humans." But Richter just stared at the screen, his face pale. "Commander," his voice was hollow. "They already know. The Zyphron's last move. In the ruins of the Zyphron Empire, one last warship remained. The Doomcaller. Inside, the final survivors of the Zyphron High Command gathered around a single console. Their empire was gone, their fleets destroyed. They had only one weapon left: the planetary extinction bomb. The last surviving warlord, General Vector, glared at his officers. His scales were cracked, his armor shattered, his tail dragging across the metal floor. But his eyes still burned with hate. "We will not surrender," he growled. One of his officers hesitated. "General, if we launch the bomb, it will." "Do it." Vector slammed his fist on the console. A deep, mechanical hum filled the ship. Inside the core of the Doomcaller, a massive black sphere began to glow. It was a planet killer, designed to erase an entire world from existence. And it was aimed directly at Earth. The humans respond. In orbit above the battlefield, the human fleet remained silent. They had destroyed the Zyphron Armada in minutes. They had left no wreckage, no survivors. But now they watched. Waited. Let the Zyphrons make their final mistake. On board the UH Olympus, Admiral Elias Carter folded his arms as he stared at the holographic display. The Zyphron's last warship had powered up its doomsday weapon. His officers waited for his command. But he just sighed. "I told you," he muttered. "They never change." His tactical officer nodded. "Should we activate countermeasures?" Carter glanced at the screen. The bomb was almost ready to launch. He barely looked concerned. "Send the command," he said simply. The officer tapped a single button. On the Zyphron ship, alarms blared. The glowing sphere flickered. The lights dimmed. And then, without a sound, the entire warship vanished. Erased from existence. No explosion. No remains. Just gone. The truth of humanity. Across the galaxy, the event was broadcasted. Every empire watched. Every leader trembled. The Zyphrons had launched their most powerful weapon. And the humans had stopped it, without even trying. No counterattack, no battle, just a single command. That was the true horror of humanity. They didn't just win wars. They ended them. With perfect precision. With zero effort. With absolute control. The Valorian spies sat in stunned silence, staring at the stolen transmissions. Richter finally spoke. "If this is what they can do with defensive technology, then what happens if they ever go into full attack mode?" No one had an answer. Because if humanity ever decided to truly fight, the entire galaxy would disappear in less than an hour. Part 6. The Final Hour. Doomsday or Victory. The galaxy was silent. The Zyphrons were gone. Their final warship had vanished, erased by human technology that no one truly understood. But the war was not over yet. Because the Doomsday Protocol had already been activated. A race against time. On board the UH Olympus, Admiral Elias Carter stared at the holographic display. A red warning flashed across the screen. Alert. Planetary extinction bomb activated. TAR GT. Earth. MPC. 59 minutes. His officers sat frozen. The Zyphrons were gone, but before their final warship had disappeared, their last command had already been sent. The bomb was on its way. And this time, even humanity had only minutes to stop it. Carter exhaled slowly. He turned to his chief strategist, Dr. Evelyn Hayes. Options? She tapped furiously on the control panel. The bomb is moving faster than light. It was designed to bypass all planetary defenses. Normal interception methods won't work. Carter nodded. I expected that. Do we have anything that will work? Evelyn hesitated. Then she looked at him, her expression grim. There's one way. Carter raised an eyebrow. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the edge of the console. The exo-shield. The entire room went silent. Everyone knew about the exo-shield. It was humanity's final defense, a planetary barrier that had never been tested against an attack of this magnitude. Theoretically, it could withstand anything. But if it failed, Earth would be erased. The countdown begins. Activate the shield, Carter ordered. The command was sent. Far away, orbiting Earth, 12 massive stations lit up, their cores glowing like newborn stars. Energy surged through them, linking together in a web of pure power. A barrier, invisible but unbreakable, began forming around the planet. On the Olympus, Carter watched the countdown. In 10 minutes. Every species in the galaxy was watching. Their fleets, their leaders, their civilians. Would this be humanity's end? Or had they once again planned for this moment long before it even happened? The bomb arrives. In the vast emptiness of space, the planetary extinction bomb tore through the void, faster than light, heading straight for Earth. Its power was beyond imagination. If it hit, there would be no explosion, no shockwave, no fire. Just absolute nothingness. The planet, the people, the oceans, the cities, all erased in an instant. But then, it hit the shield. A brilliant flash of white light engulfed the entire planet. For a moment, it looked as if Earth had already been destroyed. Then the light faded, and Earth was still there. The shield had held. The aftermath. On the Olympus, silence filled the command deck. Then, cheers erupted. "We did it!" an officer shouted. Carter exhaled and leaned back. "Of course we did." Evelyn smirked. "You never doubted it, did you?" Carter shrugged. "Not for a second. Because this was humanity. They didn't start wars. But they always finished them. The galaxy reacts. Across the galaxy, every species watched in stunned silence. They had seen the ultimate weapon strike Earth and fail. They had seen humanity survive what should have been impossible. The Valorians, the Drakkar, the Tulvok, they all knew the truth now. Humanity wasn't just another species. They were something else. Something beyond war. Something unstoppable. And if they had been studying the war for 200 years, what else had they been preparing for? For the first time in history, the entire galaxy feared humanity. The war is over. The Zypherans were gone. The war was over. And humanity? They had won in just 5 hours. With 0 casualties. With 0 invasions. With perfect, calculated victory. Admiral Carter turned to his officers. "Send a message to the surviving empires." "What message, sir?" Carter smiled. "This war is over. Don't start another one." Part 7. The End, or a New Beginning. The war was over. The Zypheran Empire was gone, erased from existence in a single night. The galaxy had witnessed something impossible. Humanity had entered the war, and in just 5 hours, they had won. No planets invaded. No armies deployed. Not a single human life lost. But for those who had survived the war, one question remained. What happens now? Underscore 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 underscore. The message that shook the galaxy. Across hundreds of worlds, alien leaders stared at their communication screens. A single message had been broadcast across every channel, in every language, from every human ship. "This war is over. Don't start another one." It was not a threat. It was a warning, and the entire galaxy listened. For centuries, the great empires of the stars had seen humans as a minor species, weak, peaceful, unimportant. Now, they knew the truth. Humanity had never been weak. They had been waiting, watching, preparing. And when the moment came, they had struck with a precision that no empire had ever imagined possible. Now, every ruler, every general, every warlord had to make a choice. Would they accept peace? Or would they risk facing humanity's full power? Underscore 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 underscore. A secret meeting? On a hidden planet, far from human space, a secret meeting was taking place. The remaining leaders of the great alien empires, Valorians, Drakkar, Tolvok, and others, gathered in a dark chamber. For the first time in history, enemies sat side by side. The Valorian High Chancellor, Gazolvos, spoke first. We underestimated them. His voice was heavy with regret. We thought humans were weak. We were fools. The Drakkar warlords slammed a fist on the table. They destroyed the Zypherans like they were nothing. What if they come for us next? Silence fell over the room. They all knew the answer. If humanity wanted to, they could wipe out every empire just as easily as they had erased the Zypherans. The Tolvok ambassador leaned forward. Then we must act. We must find out who they really are. We need to uncover the truth about humanity. The room grew colder, because the truth was already clear, and it was terrifying. Underscore 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 underscore. A new order. Back on Earth, the USS Olympus hovered in high orbit. Admiral Elias Carter stood on the bridge, looking down at his homeworld. The war was over, but he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had revealed its power. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. But what came next? Carter turned to Dr. Evelyn Hayes. How long before they start planning against us? She sighed. Not long. Some of them will want revenge. Some will want answers. Either way, they won't just forget this. Carter nodded. Then we need to be ready. He looked back at Earth. For centuries, humanity had hidden its power, choosing peace over war. But now, the universe knew what they were capable of. The question was, would humanity return to the shadows? Or was this the beginning of something new? A new era where humans were not just survivors, but the rulers of the stars. Carter smiled. Let them come. Because this time, humanity would not wait.